Put yourself in a room with 100 people. Your phone buzzes in your pocket. A notification from someone 2,000 miles away. And yet, standing there, surrounded, you feel completely invisible. State it flat, not as a feeling, but as a reading on an instrument. This is the glass wall paradox. Total visibility, zero contact. The signal arrives. The connection does not. Here is the number that frames everything that follows. 79% of United States Gen Z report chronic loneliness. The most connected generation in human history, wired to every other human alive, is officially the loneliest ever measured. Treat that as data, not irony. When the most connected cohort posts the worst isolation figures, you are not looking at coincidence. You are looking at a mechanism doing exactly what it was built to do. Now price the cost. The Holt-Lunstad meta-analysis, published in 2010, pulled 148 studies and found that chronic loneliness raises mortality risk equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Not a metaphor. A physical kill rate, measured against tobacco. The body does not register isolation as sadness. It registers it as threat, and it charges interest in inflammation, cortisol, and shortened years. This is a public health liability hiding inside a private mood. Reject the easy story first. This is not weakness, not a character flaw, not simple screen addiction. Those explanations comfort everyone because they blame the individual and leave the structure untouched. Look closer and you find something colder. This is the predictable output of changed incentives, a system optimizing for engagement and extraction rather than connection. So we do what an analyst does with any failure. We follow the money lever by lever until the machine is fully exposed. Split the definition cleanly because the words get used as if they were one. Isolation is objective. It is a head count, the literal number of people around you, something you could verify with a census. Loneliness is different. The World Health Organization defines it as a discrepancy, the gap between the relationships you have and the relationships you want. One is arithmetic, the other is subtraction, and subtraction is where the damage actually lives. Test the definition against the extremes and it holds. A person alone on a desert island, isolated by every objective measure, can feel perfectly at peace. Meanwhile, someone with 5,000 Instagram followers can starve in plain sight, surrounded by contact and getting nothing from it. The variable was never the raw volume of connection. It is the discrepancy between what you have and what you need. Volume is noise. The gap is the signal. Understand how it gets measured, because the method reveals the truth. The UCLA loneliness scale never asks the blunt question, are you lonely? It asks how often you feel that no one really knows you, how often you feel left out, how often you feel isolated from others. Subjective, indirect, and far harder to lie to. It captures the internal discrepancy rather than the external headcount, which is precisely why its numbers are so disturbing. Now compare the generations directly. In a survey of roughly 10,000 adults, about 50% of boomers scored high on loneliness. The Gen Z figure was 79%. Hold those side by side. A 29-point gap separating the oldest cohort from the youngest inside the same questionnaire, the same country, the same instrument. That gap is not background noise. That 29-point spread is the entire story we are here to explain. Kill the lazy objection now. Someone will say young people are always lonely, that it is just a phase of being 20. If that were true, if age alone drove it, then boomers in the 1970s would have posted these same numbers when they were young. They did not. Their figures were roughly half of today's. The biology of being 20 has not changed in 50 years. The environment around being 20 has changed completely. And it is not a uniquely American defect. Cross the Atlantic. In the United Kingdom, 2026 figures show roughly 47% of people aged 16 to 28 report feeling lonely often. Different country, different healthcare system, different culture, same curve bending the same direction. When the pattern replicates across borders that share almost nothing except a development model, you stop calling it a local artifact. You start calling it a structural feature of the developed world. Italy supplies the most alarming reading. Data from the CNR, the National Research Council, tracked the share of fully withdrawn young people, the so-called lone wolves who pull out of social life entirely. In just 3 years, that figure jumped from 15% to 39%. A near tripling. Cultural values do not shift that fast. 3 years is too short for drift. Something acute and external pushed that line, and it pushed hard. So what is doing the pushing? Resist the urge to list a dozen scattered causes. There are three converging levers, and they are not three separate problems. They are one system operating through three mechanisms: the algorithm, the economy, and the architecture. Digital replacement rewires the reward. Economic pressure strips the time and money. Physical design removes the places. Pull any single lever and the others still fire. We take them in order. Lever 1, digital replacement. For most of its history, social media complemented social life. You saw friends, then you posted about it. The feed was a supplement to the real thing. Somewhere in the last decade, that relationship inverted. The platform stopped complementing connection and started substituting for it. The scroll became the destination instead of the bridge to it. A complement adds to your life. A substitute quietly takes its place. Look at the precise mechanism of failure. A like lands and delivers a small dopamine microhit, the same neurochemical spark a real bond would trigger, but the connection behind it never actually arrives. The brain gets the receipt without the meal. The reward signal has been decoupled from the nourishment it was designed to flag. So you keep tapping, chasing the hit, getting fed the wrapper while the substance stays permanently out of reach. Think of it as junk food eaten during starvation. A bag of chips spikes your blood sugar, silences the hunger signal, and delivers zero protein, zero vitamins. The body stops screaming for food while it quietly wastes away. A digital scroll does the same to connect. It mimics the social signal, quiets the loneliness alarm, and supplies no actual relationship. The brain is tricked into believing it has been fed. Now follow the money, because the design is not an accident. Engagement platforms are not paid when you feel better. They are paid by attention, minutes sold to advertisers, roughly $9 per 1,000 impressions on the open market. Their revenue rises the longer you stay isolated and scrolling. A lonely user is a profitable user. So loneliness is not a bug in the system. It is a retention feature optimized for deliberately. Meet a recurring character we will call the scroller. He is 23, lives alone, and on a typical Tuesday, he watches 400 stories, likes 90 posts, and laughs at a dozen clips. He also speaks 0 words aloud the entire day. His vocal cords go unused from waking to sleep. Track him as we go because his arc is the whole argument. The system processed his entire social diet without a single conversation. That is the digital factor. Now name factor 2, the economic wall. Being social is no longer free, and the entry fee climbed faster than your paycheck. Since 2000, the cost of going out, drinks, transit, a meal, a ticket, outpaced median wage growth by a wide margin. Wages crawled while the price of presence sprinted. Friendship now carries a line item. For many, the simple act of showing up has become unaffordable. To see what was lost, rewind. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg named the third place. Not home, not work, but the cheap neutral ground in between. The corner diner, the public park, the community center, the library, the near-free cafe where you nursed one cup for an hour. Crucially, these were where unplanned contact happened, where you bumped into people you did not schedule. Spontaneous community ran on infrastructure that cost almost nothing to enter. Then the third place was monetized or bulldozed. The free park bench got removed to deter loitering. The cheap diner became a boutique. The community center lost funding and closed. What remained was gated by a transaction. You can no longer simply exist in shared space. You must purchase a reason to be there. The $7 coffee is now the cover charge for sitting down. Every social act requires a receipt at the door. Stack the squeeze higher. The gig economy fragmented income into unpredictable shifts so the scroller drives or delivers more hours just to stay level. Meanwhile, rent in major cities consumed 40 to 50% of take-home pay, up from the old 30% rule. More hours worked, less money left, and a discretionary social budget crushed to near zero. The math is brutal and simple. He cannot afford to go out, so he stays home. Now connected to power because cities were engineered for this outcome. Urban planning optimizes for retail yield and rentable square footage, not for loitering. Public space that generates no revenue, the plaza, the wide sidewalk, the free bench gets cut, privatized, or redesigned to move you along. Land must pay rent or disappear. Loneliness at this scale is not a feeling. It is a land use decision written into zoning and balance sheets. Add factor 3, the COVID hangover. The lockdowns of 2020 and 2021 did not simply pause social life, they deleted reps. We treat those years as a held breath, as if everyone resumed where they left off. But social skill is not stored, it is practiced. 2 years offline did not freeze development in place. For the people in the wrong window, it erased training that should have been accumulating quietly the entire time. Run the developmental math because it is not uniform. For a 40-year-old, 2 isolated years is a footnote against decades of practice. For a 16-year-old, those same 2 years are a massive share of the narrow window when social fluency installs. Adolescence is the training period, first arguments, first rejections, first rating of a room. Skip it and the skill is not merely paused. It was never installed in the first place. The result is a measurable rise in avoidant social anxiety. People came back out of practice rusty at the awkward silence, the first date, the messy group hangout where nobody has a script. Each of those carries real risk of embarrassment, and the muscle that absorbs that risk had gone slack. So the rational move became retreat. The screen offers the low-risk default, no silences, no rejection, infinite exit. Avoidance becomes the path of least friction. The scroller returns. When restrictions lifted, he felt fine, unchanged, maybe even relieved to skip the small talk. That is the trap. Atrophy does not announce itself on day one. Over the following years, the lag showed conversations that drained instead of fed him, invitations that felt like work, a slow drift toward the door he never had to open. It was not absence of capacity. It was decay, revealing itself on a delay. Here the analysis pivots from sociology to biology and the stakes change. Up to now, we have talked incentives, rent, and reps, the architecture outside the body. But the body does not read your loneliness as a sociological abstraction. It does not file it under mood or preference or lifestyle. Evolution wired connection as a survival requirement, so the absence registers as danger. The body does not treat loneliness as sadness, it treats it as a wound. Specifically, it locks into threat state. Chronic loneliness keeps the brain scanning for danger, which keeps cortisol, the stress hormone, elevated around the clock. Cortisol is meant to spike then stand down, held high for months. It drives systemic, low-grade inflammation through the bloodstream. The alarm that should fire for 30 seconds never switches off. The stress system, designed for a sprint, is forced to run a marathon it cannot survive intact. Start with the numbers because the body keeps a ledger. Chronic loneliness raises the risk of coronary heart disease by roughly 29%. It raises the risk of stroke by about 32%. And it increases the likelihood of dementia by close to 50%. This is not metaphor. This is a measurable medical tax levied on a social deficit, paid in arteries and neurons rather than dollars. The mechanism reaches into sleep. A lonely brain does not power down cleanly. It runs more micro-awakenings through the night, dozens of brief surfacings the sleeper never remembers. This is ancient wiring. A body with no tribe assumes no one is watching the perimeter, so it keeps scanning for predators. The result is shallow, fragmented rest, deep restorative sleep, the kind that repairs never fully arrives. Now watch the loop close. You are too lonely to sleep well, so your rest stays shallow. Shallow rest leaves you depleted, irritable, low on the energy that socializing demands. So you withdraw further, which deepens the loneliness, which degrades the sleep again. It is a self-financing deficit. Each night the body borrows against the next, and the interest compounds in isolation. The system pays for its own decline. To understand why, drop the modern story and look at the hardware. Humans are obligatorily gregarious. We were not built independent. We were built interdependent, engineered over hundreds of thousands of years to survive only inside a group. A solitary human on the ancient savannah was a dead human, so the nervous system still reads prolonged solitude as mortal danger and fires the alarms it always has. The software changed. The body did not turn that biology toward work. The remote work dividend is real. No commute, lower overhead, geographic freedom. But every dividend has a cost line, and this one was quietly booked. Roughly 1 in 3 teleworkers report significant loneliness directly tied to the arrangement. The office was a flawed, inefficient social machine, but it was a social machine. We optimized it away and never priced the connection it was silently providing for free. There is an ideology underwriting all of this. The self-made individual. I need no one, I owe no one, I built this alone. It was sold as the highest form of freedom. But examine the balance sheet. A node with no connections is not free, it is fragile. Cut every tie, and you have not achieved independence. You have removed every backstop, every redundancy, every line of credit the group used to extend. That is exposure, not liberty. The shrinkage is structural, not personal. Families are smaller than they were a generation ago. Neighborhood networks, the people you could actually call on, have contracted by around 60% since the 1980s. The dense social mesh that once caught people when they fell has been thinned strand by strand. This did not happen by accident or by mood. It happened by design, as a byproduct of how we chose to arrange work, housing, and money. Ask the analyst question, who benefits? An atomized individual is a superior consumer. 4 roommates share 1 rent, 1 kitchen, 1 streaming login. 4 isolated people pay 4 rents, 4 subscriptions, 4 of everything. Separation is not a market failure here, it is a market feature. Loneliness at population scale is enormously profitable. The incentive structure does not want you connected. It wants you alone and paying retail for the privilege. Now the honest objection, stated at full strength, maybe people simply prefer this. Maybe modern humans, given the choice, genuinely want more solitude. The introvert finally unshackled from forced small talk, the quiet evening chosen over the crowded bar. Perhaps the falling numbers reflect not a loss but a preference, a population finally free to opt out of obligations it never enjoyed. Take that seriously before knocking it down. Here is where it breaks. Revealed preference and reported desire diverge sharply. Watch behavior and people withdraw, cancel, stay home. Ask them directly and they report wanting more connection, not less. When what someone does and what someone wants point in opposite directions, that gap is not a preference being satisfied. That is the WHO's discrepancy, the precise definition of loneliness, the painful distance between the relationships you have and the ones you actually want. A second objection deserves the same fairness. Technology connects us across distance, so surely it is a net positive. Concede the point where it holds. For the grandmother 3 time zones away, the friend who moved abroad, video calls are a genuine bridge that did not exist before. That use is a gain. The failure mode is substitution, when the screen replaces the people down the street instead of supplementing the ones far away. Bridge, good. Replacement, corrosive. Assemble the spine now. The algorithm harvests your attention and sells it, so it engineers compulsion over contact. The economy prices out the gathering places, so the third spaces close. The architecture removes the rooms where strangers became neighbors. 3 separate levers, pulled by 3 separate interests, but feeding one machine. And that machine has a single reliable output. Isolation, manufactured at scale and delivered as if it were your personal failing. Name the trick precisely, it is an externality. The costs of loneliness are socialized, dumped onto the public. Higher healthcare spending, lost productivity, earlier mortality, all paid by everyone through taxes and premiums. The gains, meanwhile, are privatized, captured cleanly by the platforms harvesting attention and the landlords collecting separate rents. Profit kept private, damage charged to the commons. It is pollution, except the thing being dumped into the shared air is disconnection. Return to the scroller and open his ledger. Add the monthly subscriptions, streaming, music, the dating apps, the delivery memberships, the premium tiers. Now add what he spends on in-person contact. The dinners out, the shared rent, the club dues, the tickets. For most, the first column dwarfs the second. The budget is the confession. His money flows exactly where the captured incentive directs it, and almost none of it buys another human in the room. So just go outside fails for a structural reason, not a moral one. The destinations were removed and the free time was repriced. There is no diner counter, no affordable club, no third place that doesn't charge $7 for entry. Telling someone to walk into rooms that were demolished is not advice. Individual willpower thrown against deliberate deletion loses every single time, and the data confirms it. So reframe the fix correctly. This is not a mood adjustment or a gratitude journal. It is a rebuild of removed infrastructure plus a retraining of atrophied skills. A systems problem demands a systems answer. You restore the physical rooms where unplanned contact happens, and you retrain the relational muscles that 79% of Gen Z let waste. 2 layers, environment and skill repaired in parallel. Nothing else moves the curve. Lever 1 is relational literacy. Treat social skill exactly like a gym lift. Not a personality trait you either have or lack. It feels awkward on the first reps because the neural pathway is detrained, not because you're broken. It builds with volume. The stimulus is specific. Repeated, unplanned, in-person interaction. Not curated, not scripted, not text. Reps under real load, the same way a muscle only grows under resistance it didn't choose. Here is the concrete protocol. Join something that meets in person and recurs on a fixed schedule. A run club, a weekly Dungeons & Dragons table, a pottery class that lands every Tuesday at 7. The mechanism is recurrence, not intensity. One spectacular festival builds nothing. The same 8 faces, 52 weeks a year is what manufactures familiarity. Repetition is the active ingredient. Pick the boring recurring thing over the exciting one-off. Lever 2 reclaims the third places themselves. This one is not solo, it's political and economic. Demand zoning and urban planning that protect non-commercial gathering space, the way other countries protect public squares and libraries by law. Vote for it, spend toward it. Every dollar routed to a place that isn't pay to exist is a vote against the $7 cover charge on belonging. The market deleted these rooms because nobody made it costly to delete them. Lever 3 is the bridge rule. Technology is a bridge, never a destination. The phone exists to schedule the coffee, not to replace it. You DM to set the time and place, then you arrive. And once you're at the table, the device goes on do not disturb, face down, out of the hand. The tool delivers you to the room and then gets out of the way. Bridge, then off. The bridge rule works because of biology you cannot text your way around. The human brain needs live micro-expressions on a real face to register safe and stand down the threat state. The micro flickers around the eyes and mouth, read in real time, are what signal your nervous system to lower cortisol. A screen strips that bandwidth out. No live face, no all clear signal. The body stays armed for a danger that never resolves. Run the cost-benefit blunt. An in-person hour is metabolically cheaper than the cortisol bill of another lonely scroll. One real conversation lowers the stress load. One more hour of doom feed keeps the threat system burning fuel and inflaming tissue. Loneliness already carries the mortality cost of 15 cigarettes a day. Measured against that, the awkward club meeting is the discount option. The math favors contact. It isn't close. Watch the scroller take the exit. He doesn't quit his phone or overhaul his life. He replaces exactly one scroll session a day with one scheduled walk, same time, ideally with one other person. And he tracks the right variable, not the vibe, not the mood. He tracks the inflammation markers and the sleep data over 6 weeks. The body keeps the honest ledger. Let the numbers, not the feelings, report the payoff. Now zoom all the way out. This generation is not broken. It was handed a depleted environment, stripped of its third places, priced out of its free time, wired into engagement machines, and then asked with a straight face why it can't connect. That is not a character flaw being measured. It is the predictable output of a deliberately altered system. Correct the diagnosis and the blame moves off the individual and onto the architecture. Reframe the signal itself. Social hunger is not a pathology to be medicated into silence. It is a functioning alarm doing precisely its job. The pain points at a missing system the same way thirst points at dehydration, not at a defective throat. Feeling the loneliness sharply means the sensor is intact and accurate. The problem was never the alarm going off. The problem is the room it keeps pointing to is empty. Which leaves one open question pulling everything forward. If the loneliest generation is also the most surveilled, the most measured, and the most monetized in history, then follow the money. Every empty evening is an hour sold back to a feed. Every absent third place is a captured customer. So ask it plainly, who exactly profits from keeping the rooms empty? The isolation isn't an accident of the system. For someone, it's the product. So here is the only instruction that matters. You are not a statistic and you are not defective. You are a person whose alarm is working exactly as designed. Do one thing today, send one real question to one real person, and ask them to go for a walk, not a text thread, a walk. In a world built to keep you scrolling and alone, that single scheduled hour of contact is the most rebellious, healthy act of 2026.